She's Kim. I'm Tim. And this is K&T Adventures. Probably like episode 4. We woke up this morning to light rain and I looked out. It was right at first light, and I saw something moving out in the bushes, and it turned out to be a great blue heron. And I got to watch the great blue heron for quite a bit this morning, which was really cool because it was right outside the window of the bedroom portion of the bed. Pretty calm morning, except in our higher spot, we're on a more aggressive part of the creek, and so there's a lot of rapids going on in the background. What you see here is where we were camped the first night, and that's kind of the placid section of the creek. And below here, it gets substantially more aggressive as it goes through the brush and the trees and begins to funnel its way down towards the bridge. I went out for a walk and we had some mountain bluebirds that were around, and I saw this bird and I didn't know what the heck it was, but it had this white ring of feathers in its tail, and I got to looking. I went out with the camera and I'm looking, I'm trying to get close to him, got a couple pictures of him, could never really figure out what it was. No, it wasn't a wood duck, but I did see them earlier. And then got back and looking at the pictures, but is definitely a juvenile bald eagle. There is no way. We pulled up this one picture and I'm like, oh my gosh, that looks like an eagle. It was really cool. Hey look, an eagle! You saw in my earlier video that we'll splice in here that we had a decision to make today, and we had a decision to make based on a lot of input from our camp hosts who say this is not a problem where you're at, you're going to be fine, and a constant screening of the USGS website for water flows at Sedona, which translate into Oak Creek water flows down where we are. And we don't know this area, so trying to figure it all out while not risking life and limb and property, had us spending quite a bit of time online watching the various websites and USGS and weather related websites. We decided finally in about the middle of the afternoon, based on looking what the Sedona River gauge was doing and what it was forecasted to do, and with peak flows occurring sometime in the middle of the night, we just weren't going to stick around and risk a 3 a.m. escape out of an RV park.
Especially we had a backup site already. So.
Especially with having a backup site already, absolutely. So I took another little walk around the campsite. There's some really cool cottonwoods down there. There's a really cool weeping willow. If you know how much water it takes to grow a weeping willow, there's a lot of water down there. Walked through the old campsites. It didn't seem like the water level had changed much, even though it had been several hours since the Sedona gauge had really started to climb almost vertically. But we weren't seeing the water yet, and I was like, is there another channel that I'm not aware of, whatever? But it was time. It was time to pack up, and it was time to get out of there. So while I was on my little walk, I got some great pictures of some wood ducks. I had seen the wood ducks previously. They were in the area, and I had my camera out, and I was taking some pictures of the wood ducks, and a guy in a Jeep came along. Older Jeep, orange Jeep if I remember right, and he wanted to tell us about a newer Jeep that's almost underwater at a place called Mormon Crossing. So if you want some good pictures, you go to Mormon Crossing and get photos of this Jeep. So we had made the decision to move, but we weren't quite ready to go yet. There was really no impending threat for the next couple hours. So I was like, well, let's drive up there and see what it looks like. So we went, followed his directions to where we needed to go, and we turned off next to a school, probably a middle school, do you think? Elementary school. And got onto a gravel road that goes down to a crossing over Oak Creek.
I don't think there's much gravel on it.
It was a little mudded up, but no, I mean, it wasn't horribly rutted. It looked like just some people had driven over it, and
it looked perfectly fine.
It looked perfectly fine. It was an ice skating rink. We started going downhill. I'd shifted into four-wheel drive before we actually really started going, and it was just like driving on ice. That fine powder had enough moisture in it, and we started headed toward a ditch. So I powered it back towards the center. We got about a quarter mile down the road, and I'm like, we're not doing this. And I'm looking for a place to turn around, and it's just like, we're on ice.
But we weren't.
Well, we weren't. But the Jeep was going to turn sideways. It was so slick. So I decided that we were going to back out. And so we had about a quarter of a mile straight road to back out. But there was no going straight on that road. It was absolutely insane. Crazy. It kept wanting to suck us over to the ditches, and it wasn't like there was a significant slope. It was just so greasy that any amount of camber wanted to take you in the direction of camber. Holy smokes. I thought the rest of the day was stressful. Going back up that hill backwards I wasn't sure. I was like, I'm glad we had our traction equipment in case we end up in the ditch, because that road was unbelievable. It was just like grease.
It was.
I've not been on a road like that probably ever. I don't want to do it again. So while we thought we had everything planned out really well for this trip, today is Wednesday, and we've done 3 moves in 3 days. Obviously, this was something that we thought was really prudent to do, and so it was a pretty quick and easy move. Our new campsite is just about 20 miles down the road in Cottonwood, well above the river. We're still on the river, but we're like 30 feet above the river. So I'd rather be 30 feet above the river than 4 feet above the river. So, and the other bank of the river is only 10 feet above the river. So there's a lot of other stuff that could flood. If we get flooded up here, we in deep, deep trouble. But the move went well. We like this campground. It's got good internet, which is something the other campground did not absolutely have. And we're trying to debate whether we're going to stay here, or when this all subsides, are we going to go back to the other campground to round out our trip. We had a dinner reservation tonight at the top of the hill going down to our campground. We could have literally walked to dinner. When we just left. That's exactly right.
It's called Up the Creek.
Up the creek. Absolutely. So we decided that we were going to honor our dinner reservation at Up the Creek. We've heard a lot of great things about that restaurant, both from people in the Sacramento area and for people in the Sedona area. So we're like, well, we're going to definitely do that. So we drove back down to our old campsite first. We had like 10 minutes, and the lower campsites where we were the first night were already underwater. And looking at the Sedona gauge, there's a lot more water to come down that way. So pretty happy with our decision. We went up, Had a wonderful dinner. Really, really highly recommend
Yes.
Up the Creek if you're ever in this area. But what happened during dinner made our decision to move ironclad. We had a tremendous downpour, 20 minutes probably of extremely hard rain while we were there. And looking at the radar, this was a storm that impacted a lot of the valley from Flagstaff down through Sedona down to where we were at. So it's just another example of you just don't know what's going to happen, and you need to be proactive in putting yourself in a safe situation, because there's nothing more powerful than moving water. And once it's dark, you can't really tell what's going on until potentially it's too late. So we sat there 40 feet above the water in the restaurant, watching the flood waters below us in this torrential rain that you just know is going to result in even higher water levels. When we started out the day, the heaviest of the part of the rain was supposed to have been in the morning, not in the late afternoon. Now we've got thunderstorms coming in. We've had consistent rain since that torrential downpour, and who knows where the river levels are going to go. I'm just glad that we're not in a position where we have to care. We get to have a good night's sleep. And with that, we'll leave you until tomorrow. Cheers. We high and dry.
Buona notte.
Buona notte.